behalf of the SCA, the Spartan Community Alliance, I want to thank the Cattan family for hosting the 5th Thursday night college and young professional evening of this summer 2016. This is the 4th year that we've been having these Thursday night programs. We select a home every Thursday night to go to and have a different rabbi speak. In the beginning of the summer and towards the end of the summer, we have Rabbi Dweck giving a series of talks on some enticing subject of the Torah. We had a tremendous showing last week at the Ashkenazi house, and the houses before that. We had a wonderful time, and we have a goal. The goal of the SCA is to bring young people together on Thursday nights to talk about an interesting topic and to create relationships, friendships around meaningful topics. And we believe that if we do that as a group, we create a subculture, we create a movement for you in order to have a home base, in order to be able to feel comfortable creating friendships and relationships on important issues. In order to further that program, the SCA has put together an entire program for Tisha B'Av. Over 30 classes will be happening this Saturday night and Sunday at the JCC. There are flyers on the tables. I will have more flyers to hang out. There are flyers on Instagram. Rabbi Dweck is speaking, Esther Hidary is speaking, Vivian Hidary is speaking, Rabbi Tobias, Rabbi Towel, Rabbi Seton, Rabbi Esses. Many community lay leaders are speaking. Ricky Cohen is speaking, Charles Anthony is speaking, DJ Cohen is speaking. We have a fantastic program. And if I could be a little bit corny, I'd like to say the following about the Tisha B'Av. Don't Netflix your fast away. We want to see you Saturday night. What you do is that you pray Mincha Shul, you go home, you have your last meal. The fast begins at 7:50. Shabbat ends at 8:35. Beat at the JCC is 8:50. And then we have a movie. We're playing a Twilight Zone clip. Rabbi Dweck will wrap that up. The next morning we have 2 minyanim, one at 8 o'clock and one at 9 o'clock. And then every hour on the hour we have a class for you to attend. So please, we want to see you there. We're doing this for you. We want to be there for you. And we want to make sure that you take the opportunity to join us. Without further ado, I want to invite Rabbi Dweck to give us some words of Torah. The system that we have on Thursday nights is the rabbi talks for 30 minutes. And then afterwards we have what's called Stump the Rabbi, where the floor is opened up to you to Q&A, to have questions, and the rabbi could choose to answer or not. And you can ask any question, political, religious, halachic, philosophical, that you like. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good seeing everyone. First, I want to thank Jack and Eli Cattan for welcoming everyone in, and Sylvia. And of course, Mr. and Mrs. Cattan for opening the home and for inviting everyone in, for welcoming me to share some Dweck Torah with everyone. And as I said to you before, these Thursday nights are the highlight of my summer. I'm enjoying them very much, and I thank you for sharing. Tonight, I want to share an idea with you that is a concept in Torah that is often overlooked, often misunderstood, but it's also a concept in the physical world. How it is that we relate to elements of the world. The reason that I want to speak about it tonight is because it's in jeopardy, it's in danger. And there is tremendous skepticism among the thinkers of the world today as to this reality and this phenomenon. The Hebrew word for the concept that I want to speak to you about is malchut. And it is more than what we might think it is when we first hear the word. It isn't just about kings and queens, although it has to do with that. The English word is emergence. And what I'm going to do is present the ideas to you, because all of you know exactly what these things are through experience. We might just not have the vocabulary or think about speaking of them as they are. So let's think for a minute. We know that there is a saying that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah? Heard this? Who can tell me what that means?
Yeah, Victor.
It's like synergy, you know, when two companies will get together or something, or just in general, like getting together will be better than being.
How will it be better?
It'll be more efficient, or it'll be produce better outcomes or better.
But it'll still be just two companies, right?
Yeah, I mean it'll be one. No, there'll be one.
Will be something more there than there is?
Yeah.
Right, so we have to figure out what that is. Because we know that there is this idea that I can take two individual things or more, bring them together, and somehow there's something else that comes often from the interaction. I'll give you a few examples. How many of you have visited other cities in New York City? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Good. Okay, who can call one out to me that you visited? What is it? Chicago. Anyone else? Anything outside of the United States?
London.
Copenhagen, London,
Paris.
What is it? Geneva. Okay. If you, any Israeli cities? Jerusalem, Tel Aviv. Good. Jerusalem, Tel Aviv. So, you will probably agree that the minute that you enter another city, there's something about the city that you feel that is unique to the city. Jerusalem is not Tel Aviv, yes?
Right.
London is not New York City. Copenhagen is definitely not New York City. So when we have to decide or think about, we rarely do because we just go in and we experience. And the city has its vibe, its energy, its personality. And every city has its personality. Some are more similar than others. Some are very different than others. But when we think about it, if we had to break it down, how do we break it down? Are we able to point to 1, 2, 3, all specific components and say, well, these are the ingredients that make the city the city? Or is it something more that we can't necessarily point our finger to? Is there something that emerges from the details and interactions that create this identity to a city? You know what I'm talking about? So now let's think about that. When I say this, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, really what I'm saying is that if I take the parts and put them together and all I look at is the conglomerate of the parts, I've got the parts all together. But the sum brings me something more. And in the words of the physicist Murray Gell-Mann, who studies subatomic particles, which is, smaller than electrons, neutrons, and protons. Very simply, he says, you do not need more to get more. I can bring details together, and somehow, in the interaction of these details, I experience something that emerges beyond just the details themselves. But you can't put your finger on it. And that's why people are skeptical. But you and I all can agree that experientially, there's something there beyond just the detailed parts. Let's think about thoughts. Where do they come from? Consciousness. My capacity as a human being to be aware that I'm aware. Yeah? In other words, I know that I know. Which means that I have the capacity for what's called meta-consciousness. Not only am I aware of my world, I'm aware that I'm aware of my world. And I'm aware that I'm aware that I'm aware of my world. And that is why, when I'm sitting and daydreaming, I can stop and think, I'm daydreaming. While I'm daydreaming. And so I almost look, yeah? So I can look at myself from the outside. That is a uniquely human capacity, as far as we know. No other animals on this planet are capable of doing it quite like we are. We literally can look at ourselves from the outside while we're doing whatever it is that we're doing. I can know that I'm thinking something when I'm thinking something, and think about the fact that I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about, and wonder why I'm thinking what I'm thinking. It's the craziest thing. And we do this all the time, every day. That is an emergent phenomenon. Because if I were to break down my consciousness to the core parts that allow for consciousness, what do I have? Who can tell me? What do I have? Neurons. On and off off switches in my brains? Yeah? I mean, where exactly do I point to where consciousness happens in my mind? As a matter of fact, my mind is not my brain, is it? My mind is an emergent aspect of my brain. My brain is a physical piece of meat which has neurological connections that fire electricity and so on through my brain, on-off switches, massively complex circuitry. The most complex structure in the known universe, as far as we know, by many orders of magnitude, is the human brain. And yet, I don't understand consciousness. We still do not understand. We can study it in terms of its manifestations, but I don't know where exactly it comes from, and it's the same thing as not knowing where exactly Yerushalayim comes from. The feeling of being Yerushalayim, or Tel Aviv, or London, or Deal, or New York, or whatever it is. It's emergent. That's the word. So it's the same thing that happens, for example, when you've ever seen perhaps an ant colony. Have you ever seen an ant colony run? It's fascinating. Somehow it's as though the whole colony has a brain of its own. So it's as though it's working with a brain. It's as though the whole colony is one entity, yeah? You take one ant out of the colony and put it on its own. Doesn't know what to do. Doesn't do much. But you have a queen ant, like you have a queen bee. Funny that they call it that. Somehow the queen bee keeps the whole thing together, but you know what a hive of bees is like and the way that it runs. One bee doesn't really know what to do. The whole hive runs like an entire machine, doesn't it? And you have this one bee that is the queen bee, the malchut, that keeps the entire thing together. Now it's funny because in Hebrew that's the word for it. We just don't know that that's the word for it. But what does it say, for example, about the king of Yisrael? Does anybody know? There's one major rule for the king. He's not allowed to have too many horses, and not too much money, too many wives, but it says something else about him. That he has to be very careful about what? Liberty what?
Liberty, rum levavo.
Last word?
Rum levavo.
Me'echav. Very good, good. You had the majority. Thank you for answering. Liberty, rum, levavo, me'echav. The king is to be king, which means that he's supposed to preside. He has power as a king, he leads as a king, and yet he is not to be exalted beyond his brothers. So on the one hand, he needs to rule. He wears the crown. Nobody else wears the crown. There's only one king. And at the same time, he cannot be an entity that is removed from the people over whom he rules. So, take the queen. And when I say the queen, you know what I mean, right? There's only one. Queen of England. So the queen, she just turned 90. She became queen when she was 25 years old.
Wow.
And she's been queen for over 60 years. And she's been a remarkable queen. And it's funny because when people hear about her, they always say the same thing. They say she has no power. Now, it's true she has very little power. People don't realize, though, how much power she genuinely does have. She meets with the prime minister once a week. She brings with her 60 years of knowledge as to what's going on. Those meetings are very serious and important. She has more power than that. Every single day, Parliament sends her all of the documents that have been dealt with and decided upon. She has to read them and sign them. She reads them very meticulously and comments on them. So the queen doesn't have direct political power, but there is something that she does have that is extremely important that everybody realizes. Yeah? And it is this. The queen represents the country to itself. She is the embodiment of the country. And she knows this. Because the day that she became queen, she gave up her personal life. She did no longer have a life that was her own to do with as she wished. And she says this in her opening statement on the radio when she becomes queen. And she says to the people, whether my life is long or short, I will serve you with all my heart and soul. This is the queen. She's saying, I'm going to serve you with all my heart and soul, whether my life is long or short. And that's precisely what she's done. She's been a very good queen because she genuinely does not take anything for herself. Does she have majesty? Yes. Do we call her Your Majesty? Yes, we do. That's how we refer to her. What is her majesty? What is the majesty that is hers? It's the people. It's England. And she understands this. It is the one element of Malchut that has been retained because the other element of Malchut, which is the power of the majesty, was always abused by the kings of Europe and the old world. And so they removed power from the king, but in England they maintained the monarch. Why did they maintain the monarch? Because the monarch presents the country to itself, and it brings something very important to the country, and that is memory. So the queen is emergent because she cannot hold a private identity. She is the expression of the entire people. Our kings were precisely the same. When the Torah says, "Libilti rum livavo me'ahav," what it means is you preside and wear the crown, but your heart does not rise above and beyond the people. You are the people. You are the physical manifestation of the people. Where else does your existence come from? So the Zohar says about Malchut the following. It says, Malchut let la migarma klum. That Malchut has nothing of its own. And this is why the Achamim say about David HaMelech, how long was David HaMelech supposed to live? There's a midrash like this. How long do the Achamim say David HaMelech was supposed to live?
Around here.
1 day. 1 day. We're very close. 1 day. Right? He had no life of his own. Because remember, David HaMelech is king par excellence. He is the epitome of what we mean when we say king. We call him Mashiach, who's going to be a later king, B'merav Yamenu ben David. He's the son of David. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whenever he refers to a righteous king, he says, Ke David Avdi, like David my servant. David is Malchut par excellence. The Hachamim point out, David HaMelech, the soul of the king, has no days of its own life. Where does the soul of the king come from? The people. And so that's why the Hachamim say, you know where he got his 70 years from? Adam HaRishon, which is primal human. Right? So it's humanity itself, basically, that gives the king the years of his life. So where did the Malchut start to fall apart? When Marie Antoinette was the Queen of France. There's a very famous story about her. When the people were starving, they had no food to eat, and they went to the queen and said, the people are starving, they have no food. She said, well, let them eat cake. She had no concept as to what that was going on with the people. They don't have bread. You get cake. You think everybody gets cake like you do? You're completely removed from the people. Failure of Malchut. It's no longer emergent. It no longer comes from the entirety that is the nation. There's a beautiful portrait of the queen in Gatwick Airport. 2 portraits. One of the queen when she was young and one of the queen when she was old. And you know what it's made of? Hundreds, thousands of miniature portraits of random citizens of the country.
Cool.
It's exactly this, because she comes out, right? You see clearly that it's the queen, but as you look closely, you see that all of it are just individual portraits of random citizens of the British Isles. That's Malchut. So there are stories in the Gemara about this, because it's not only kings and queens, it's leaders. So it says about Rabban Gamliel, a very sharp thing, very harsh thing, because Rabbi Yehoshua was insulted by Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel was Nasi Israel. He was, for all intents and purposes, His Majesty. He embodied the majesty of Israel at the time. And it's a long story, I'm not going to get into the details of the story, but he embarrassed Rabbi Yehoshua. He insisted that Rabbi Yehoshua, more than once, should do things that were against Rabbi Yehoshua's ideas and wishes in public. Now, the reason why Rabban Gamliel did that is because he had authority. And Rabbi Yehoshua was challenging Rabban Gamliel's authority, and you don't challenge the king's authority publicly. So Rabban Gamliel felt that he had reason to do this. But the Hachamim spoke to Rabban Gamliel, and they said, you have to make amends with Rabbi Yehoshua. So Rabbi Yehoshua went to visit, Rabban Gamliel went to visit Rabbi Yehoshua. And he walks into Rabbi Yehoshua's house, and he sees that the walls of Rabbi Yehoshua's house are black. Not because he painted them that way, it wasn't like strange in his interior design. He says to him, clearly, you're a co-worker. Lo yadamti shepehami ata, says Rabban Gamliel. And you know what Rabbi Yehoshua says to him in response? Very harsh and sharp response. He says, Oy lador she'ata parnaso. He says, woe to the generation that you're the leader. Why did he say that to Rabban Gamliel? He said, I am with you in the Beit Midrash every day. You don't know what I do for a living? You have no concept of what I do for a living? I'm in the Midrash with you every day. How could you come into my house and say, Lo yadati shebehani ata? And one reason why I was talking about the leadership was, you are slowly becoming a leader that is losing touch with the constituency that creates your life to begin with. This is why in Torah the concept of emergence is called malchut. It's why in a beehive you have a queen bee. It's why in an ant colony you have the queen ant. It is why or how we detect what we call majesty. How do you put your finger on majesty, on grandeur, on beauty? The problem with it is that the minute you try to break beauty down into its details, or majesty down into its details, you lose it. Because it doesn't exist in the details. It emerges from the details. Why is this important? It's important because the most important things of our lives are emergent phenomena. Take love, for example. Where do you find it? How do you measure it? What are its components? Can you write a book about it, have someone read it, and get them to know what love is? Is it measurable? Or does it emerge from interactions, gestures, feelings, actions, all coming together that create an experience that we call love that doesn't quite belong on our level of reality? Somehow it emerges, and you just can't put your finger on it, but you know it to be true. Yes? When we begin to question the reality of emergent phenomena, we begin to strip away, cut away, at the most important elements of our lives. Imagine if all we cared about were the neurons that fire in our brains, and we didn't care about the thoughts and the consciousness that emerges from them. Imagine if we began to look at ourselves as human beings as nothing more than what we are on a biological, physical plane, which is atoms, particles that are interacting. So the fact that I have consciousness, good, wonderful. So I have consciousness. So what happens when you get a bunch of these things to work together? Don't make more of it than it is. And yet for some reason, we wouldn't take a baby and smash it the same way that we would take a chair perhaps and smash it, because we understand that the consciousness that emerges from these unbelievably complex interactions is real, even though I can't put my finger on any one part of it. Yeah? Why are the emergent phenomena most important to me? Because it's in the emergent phenomena that Kadosh Baruch HaBaruch Hu is most greatly expressed. Because that's when we understand what Yehud means, unity means. Because I can actually see that from a myriad of sometimes contradictory pieces and particles, unity emerges. And so we live in a country where we don't have a king, but yet on all of our money it says E pluribus unum, which means what? Out of the many, unum, one. That's emergence. That was the dream of the founding fathers of this country, that you should be able to have states that have their own unique identities, that nonetheless come together and allow for an emergent country that is the United States, and there will preside over them a president, a nasi. In Hebrew, nasi is to be raised. He is emergent if he's doing, or she is doing, what she or he is supposed to be doing. There is always a risk of rum levavo me'achav, of Marie Antoinette syndrome, of losing complete connection to what it is that you're part of, or who it is that voted and elected, and what you emerge from. But it is a real phenomenon. And the most important things are expressed because in those expressions, God is expressed. The unity of the Creator is expressed in the unity of the emergence. And that is majesty. We know it to be beautiful, moving, sometimes staggering, but it is so fragile, and it is so dependent on my experience, because I will lose sometimes the forest for the trees. You ever hear that expression? What does it mean to lose the forest for the trees? I lose the emergence for the details. And I got stuck in the details, and I forget the entirety that emerges from it. And that is why we don't say Baruch Shem Kivon Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed out loud. What are we talking about when we say Malchuto? I don't say it out loud because it's hard for me sometimes to detect it. I don't always see the emergence. And do you know what's happening in the world today? We are so losing the level of emergent realities that all we talk about are the basic mechanics. We do have people that say, we're nothing more than bags of chemicals. Stop taking yourself so seriously. We do have people to say, love is overrated. I'm only going to talk about the mechanics. I'll tell you honestly, openly, you'll forgive me for bringing it up, but you listen to music today. 90% of it is about mechanics between human beings that love each other, and not the love. Isn't that right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah? It wasn't that way. How much are we hearing about love and care and tenderness in our music as opposed to the mechanics? Think about that. Be conscious of it. Understand that it is thirsty because you can't put your fingers on it. You can't take out your ruler and measure it. You can't weigh it. You can't put any parameters on it and say, okay, I've got this down. It depends on our interactions and consciousness in order to be able to know it. And so Tisha B'Av, and with this I'll end and open for questions, Tisha B'Av is very much about this, because Tisha B'Av came about because we refused to live in Malchut. Essentially, Tisha B'Av is the result of the breakdown of our Malchut, is it not? And where we no longer wanted to embrace the full expression of what we were as a people, to hold a king, to be firm, robust, complete as a nation, and we just cut ourselves down further and further and further. And now our question is, how brave are we and how willing are we to be everything that we can be as a people? So Tisha B'Av refocuses us on what elements of Malchut are we missing, and do I want it, and am I interested in it? And so there's one thing that the Gemara says about it, and I'll get questions. It says when the Babylonians destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, they went into the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies, and they found the Aron there. And on top of the Aron are the Cherubim, yes? The golden Cherubim, the cherubs, and you can raise them. And it says in the pasuk in Echad, Kol mechabedeha hiziluha. All those who once respected her cheapened her. And the Hachamim say, what was it? They said, oh, look at these people. They have children embracing in love in their inner sanctum. This is what they care about. So instead of looking at it as love and expressions of love between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they looked at it as cheap junk. And they paraded it through the streets. And that was the result of us ultimately cutting ourselves down. Is there malchut in me as a human being? In us as human beings? I don't mean in terms of our collective. I mean as a human being. Can I break myself down? Sure I can. Is there majesty in my own existence? Of course there is. And I can either look at myself as nothing more than chemicals, or just a bunch of maybe a few attributes that are alright, or I can look at myself as an expression of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and manifesting majesty, as indeed we all are. And that is why the pasuk says that you are Mamlechet Kohanim. You are a kingdom of Kohanim, Melech, each and every single one of us. Question? Yeah.
Okay, so I think I might be misunderstanding something. Because what it sounds like you're saying is that we as a human race are moving further and further away from being able to have this malchut and unite and become one. That's not what you're saying. So then
I'm saying we are overall moving towards it.
moving towards
What
it.
I'm saying, yes, overall, as a world, we are moving towards it. How do I know that? Because the connections are insane,
You look at
right? I mean,
technology.
the connections that we have in the world are insane. But in our process of getting there, we are breaking down. So it's almost as though we're cutting down in order to be able to rebuild. So we're putting the structures in place, but our thinking is not necessarily there yet. And where we used to look much more at emergent phenomena as valuable, we now look at it much less so, even though it happens, because we know how things work. So when we didn't know how things work, I just knew that I was conscious. Consciousness is a reality. The minute I know about neurons and how consciousness comes, well, it's an illusion.
Can you give an example? of what you're
I'm saying, right? So that before I, thanks. Cheers. In other words, before I knew how things worked in the world, which means before I knew that I was made of atoms, I looked at myself as a being with a soul. Can I put my finger on? I know it's soul. Soul's from God, right? So my consciousness, my feelings, my love, that's my soul. The minute I know that you cut me away and there's nothing more there than atomic particles, okay, get over the soul thing. You know, you told yourself that because you didn't know about the atomic particles. But the minute that you know about the particles, it's all particles. And so whatever imaginary stuff that's going on in your brain is some side point or some, what do you call it, symptom of these crazy interactions. Don't get so hung up on that. It's just a symptom of interactions. It's not soul. So the minute that I know how things work, I think of it in terms of the workings rather than the emergent phenomena.
So my opinion is that we as a people have never cared more about those types of things. I mean, you look at the social movements that are going on around the world. Everything is around the human experience and whether or not it's fair or just. We've never had something like that, like a world movement focused around making sure the human experience is at the best it can be.
Yes, that is true. But at the same time, I am not interested in hearing. For example, take the issue of abortion. Okay? I don't deal with, I'm not saying that we should think of abortion like the Christians do. But you take the issue of abortion, the only way that this could even be a discussion in any meaningful way is to be able to look at a fetus as a conglomerate of cells and not a life. So this is the whole discussion. When do I look at it as a life? And when don't I? Do I not have to be sensitive to emergent phenomena in order to be able to even speak about what I call life as opposed to a conglomerate of cells? So if it's nothing more than a conglomerate of cells, then it's much less a serious issue than if I'm actually dealing with another life. No?
Yeah, and you feel...
Okay. So what I'm saying is that you're correct that we are in dissonance all the time, because on the one hand, our whole world is moving to emergence. On the other hand, I keep reminding myself, don't get caught up in the emergence. It's only detailed particles.
Like, what's going on that you feel that way? What would be an
I
example?
give an example. Follow the argument of abortion. You can't have the argument. It's not enough. You cannot have the argument if you don't have a side that looks at a fetus as nothing more than a conglomerate of cells. Literally, you know, just cut it apart and you get your cells, and that's it. It's not a life. Yeah? You hear that?
It sounds like there's two sides, and
There are.
There's always
There
two
are.
sides,
There
right?
are two sides. There are two sides.
Uh-huh.
But I'm saying that more today than ever before, do we look at things or have an openness to looking at things as nothing more than the particles? Because we know the particles. We didn't used to know the particles. So everybody accepted soul as a reality. Yeah?
So it's getting easier to.
It's getting easier to pull out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, how do we view God in the context of this emergent phenomenon? I mean, I understand it in terms of the human king is emerging from the nation as representative, as the soul of the nation, as serving the nation, and therefore emerges from the nation. But how would God and God's malchut be considered as emergent?
God himself is not emergent.
So
I
God-
recognize the source in its manifestation through emergence. In other words, because I'm able to see unity in emergent phenomena through detailed particles that they themselves are not necessarily unified, I'm able to see the expression of the unity that brought it into being. You hear that?
Right.
Yeah? All right.
Wait,
Go. Yeah.
okay. You said, what elements of malchut are missing?
Say it again?
You
Well,
said,
our people. Our people.
yeah,
The people of Israel.
yeah.
What elements of malchut are we missing? Very good question. What elements are we missing? I mean, are we done? Have we come to the end point in terms of our potentials as a people? Well, unity is one. I mean, forget about even the stuff that we talk about regarding Mashiach and Beit HaMikdash and all of that stuff. We can't even get our act together.
We're not even together yet.
We're not together at all. Right? So there are things that are coming out that we've never seen before in Israel, aspects of the people, and so on and so forth. But as far as the unity of the nation of Israel, we've got a lot of work to do to be able to come together and hold together and be able to A, maintain our unique differences, and B, have those differences coalesce, and like Victor said, synergy, to allow for an emergent phenomenon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just, right now, as all of us here, what are we supposed to
Yeah, this is nice, but this is nothing. I mean, God bless, it's beautiful.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
What I mean by that, don't get nervous, Rabbi. What I mean by that is, we are an entire nation of diverse people. So we've got a nice bunch of SY kids here that are having a nice time and we're enjoying, you know, but
I wasn't praising.
there's a whole nation out there, you know what I'm saying? What are you saying?
I'm saying I wasn't praising us for all coming together tonight. I'm saying.
No, you should be praised for
Okay.
coming.
Okay. Just like on Sunday, what are we supposed to be trying to achieve, or what are like? It's such a big. You're saying it on such a high level. I can't even think about
Start low.
it. Okay, like what?
Unity.
My friends, my community, like how?
Beyond the community.
How
If-
much-
You know what? If it helps you to start with your friends, then start with your friends. If you have difficulty being able to engage because of differences, then think about what needs to happen in order for those differences to be bridged. Think about our community and other communities. How many communities does our community collaborate with? Okay, so you think about that. Is there collaboration? Do we reach out? Do we open ourselves to people who reach out to us in terms of, but beyond tzedakah? So about collaboration, connections, relationships. Yes, do we think about anybody beyond? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe in certain circumstances yes, maybe in circumstances no. But the point is, that is an issue. Because you cannot have emergence on a broader scale unless there's coalescence of details. Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay. All right.
So when I was your age, no one spoke to me about emerging anywhere. I want to crystallize what we're trying to do here. you need to recognize that at this point in your lives, you are in the process of the tremendous, explosive possibility of emergence. And if you put your finger on it and recognize it, you become greater just by recognizing the defining moments in your life that you're going through right now. You're emerging. You'll always be emerging according to the Rabbi, but right now, at this age, is a massive explosion of emergence. The question is, what are you going to do with it? So I'm here to tell you that all of the rabbis and the lay leaders are here for you to make sure that the decisions that you're making now in your lives, while you're emerging, you can use us as a tool to help you make those decisions. The SCA, thank God, Sephardic Community Alliance, President Jaime Chao, recognizes the need and the void right now in the community for leadership for you and your age group. So we're ready to provide you with anything that you need in order to help you survive this transition. One of the greatest things we did last year was a Friday night Thanksgiving dinner. We had 86 young adults, college students, coming from college, from Boston, from Penn, from NYU, and we would, in the basement of B'nai Ishaq, we had a dinner and an hour and a half conversation and a dialogue and a panel. It was fantastic. It's those type of things that the SCA and I and Rabbi Dweck and all your rabbis want to do, but you have to take the first step. So if you go on scaupdates.org or you go on Instagram, be aware throughout the year that we're going to run programs for you. It costs you nothing. We want to do it for you. So please, jump on the bandwagon, join us, so we can create a wonderful movement together. I want to thank the Cattans for their home. You're welcome to stay and partake of the desserts. Thank you very much.